Let's take a look at the last section in chapter 2. This is measures of position. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at quartiles, they're called. So Q1, Q2, Q3. And what we do is we divide the data set into 4 equal parts. So we look at all of the data. If we're doing it by hand, we're going to put the data in ascending order. So the smallest number first, then the next number, all the way up to the highest number. And then we're going to split them up into quarters. Now, luckily, StatCrunch is going to do this for us when the numbers get too big, when we have our data sets get too big. But first, we're going to try it out on our own. Each year in the United States, automobile commuters, waste fuel due to traffic congestion. The amounts in gallons per year of fuel wasted by commuters is in the 15 largest U.S. urban areas are listed. Okay, so we're looking at gallons per year, right? So we're looking at the amount of fuel wasted by commuters, and we have 15 different pieces of data. And you can see they're all over the place, right? The smallest one is 11. The largest one looks like it's 35. Now, before we can put these into quartiles, we have to put them in ascending order. So what that means is I've got to look for the smallest number. Smallest number is 11. So that's what I'm going to put first. Then I look for the next number in ascending order. Looks like that's 20. Put 20 next. Looks like then we go to 22 and so on. So these numbers are in numerical order from smallest to biggest. Again, StatCrunch is going to do this for us, but we're just I just wanted you to get a feel for what the quartiles are about. Okay, so first we're going to find the median, right? Q2 is actually the median. And in StatCrunch, it's going to be that way too. In StatCrunch, they have Q1 and Q3, but they don't literally call it Q2. That's going to be the median. So the median is the data piece smack dab in the middle. So since we have 15, that means that I have 7 pieces of data to the left of 25 and 7 pieces of data to the right of 25. So 25 is smack dab in the middle. That's going to be my Q2. Okay, then I'm going to just look at the 7 items on this side and find the middle of that one. And so the middle of that one is 23. So that's going to be my Q1. All right, that is my 25% mark right here. This is going to be my 50% mark. Then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. Look at the 7 items over here, find the number in the middle. That would be 30. That's Q3, and so that would be my 75% mark. So what happens is a quarter is in between each of these. All right, so we definitely have to have them in ascending order. It would work the same way as with the median before, that if there were 2 numbers in the middle, we would have to average those. So we would find the midpoint between those 2 numbers, and that would be our Q1 or our Q2. All right, let's keep looking. Okay, so for vocabulary, we have we call it an IQR. This is also going to come out of StatCrunch. It's the interquartile range. Okay, and this basically is the range of numbers between Q1 and Q3. So what we do is we take Q3, we subtract Q1 from it, and that's going to be what we call our interquartile range. And so that's the 50% in the middle there. Then we have this calculation that we have to use for the finding outliers. So what we're going to do, we have to find Q1 and Q3. We have to find the IQR. Again, StatCrunch is going to find all that. But then we have to do a little bit of analysis. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 2 ends when we look for outliers. And I'm going to show this visually in a few minutes. But on the left-hand side, we're going to look at Q1 minus 1.5 times that interquartile range. Okay, and so that's going to be our outliers way to the left. And then we're going to do the same thing with Q3, only we're adding. So then we're going to take Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR, and that's going to be our outliers to the right. Okay, so give me a minute. We're going to look at this visually. All right, before we look at those outliers, let's take a look at what we call a box and whisker plot. I know it's kind of interesting looking, but it does show us a lot. What's going to happen is we are going to plot our minimum entry here and our maximum entry here. So we look at our data for that problem we were working on. We had 11 was our smallest number, so that would go in the minimum entry, and we had 35 as the maximum data point, and so that would go on the maximum entry. Then for our box, we're going to use our Qs. So we're going to plot Q1, Q2, which is actually the median, and Q3. And we're going to plot those on the number line, and then that's how we draw the box. And so what we can see, like with this one, we can see that we have a lot bigger of a range between Q1 and Q2 than we do between Q2 and Q3, right? Because the box is longer. So it gives us a little more information. We also have we have a large range between the minimum point and getting up to that Q1, because that's very long as well. Okay, so this just kind of gives us another visual look at the data, especially when you have a lot of data. It's very hard to just look through a line full of like 100 data points or 1,000 data points. And so this gives you a visual of where that data is and what the ranges are for each of those quarters. All right, so this is the data from what we were looking at a few slides ago. So this is the raw data out of order. Once we put it into order, we were able to find Q1, Q2, and Q3. And of course, we knew our minimum and our maximum. So our minimum, 11, was sitting right here. That's our minimum point, our smallest data point. 35 was our largest data point, so that's going to sit here. And then we knew, and we're going to do it from StatCrunch, of course, we knew that Q1 was 23, so that's right here. Q2, or the median, was 25, that's right here. And then Q3 was 30, and that's right here. And look how wide a spread there is. So all of this data, 25% of the data between the 23 and the 25 is very grouped together. And that's because you have a few 25s in there. It looks like you have 3 25s. Okay, so these are grouped close together. This distance is very small, whereas you can see the distance is much bigger for the next quarter of the data between 25 and 30. All right, so that's my box and whisker, but we want to look at the outliers. All right, so first we have to find the IQR. All right, so let's find that. So the IQR is equal to Q3 minus Q1. So that would be 30 minus 23, and that gives me 7. All right, make sure I did that right. So Q3 is 30, Q1 is 23, and therefore the IQR, the interquartile range, is going to be 30 minus 23, or 7. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at where our outliers would lie. So let's look, for the first one, we want Q1 minus 1.5 times, well, let me put the IQR in there. All right, so that would be 23 minus 1.5 times 7. So let me pop that into the calculator. That would give me 12.5. And then let's do the same thing for this one. This is Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. So that's going to be 30 plus 1.5 times 7. Let's see what that is. Did I do that right? Yep. So that is 40.5. All right, so I have 12.5 on one end and 40.5 on the other. So what this is telling me is that if I have any data values that are less than 12, whoops, I didn't write that very well. Let's do it up here. So on this end, if I have any data values less than 12.5, those are going to be outliers based on my formula. So we do have an outlier here. It looks like 11 would actually be an outlier because it's less than 12.5, right? So 12.5 would be right about here. That's my mark of where I would have outliers, and that's all based on the data that's lumped together in the middle. Okay, then for 40.5, it would be that if it was greater than 40.5, it would be an outlier. We're going to do this again. And so that would be way out here. So we actually don't have any outliers on the right-hand side, but we do on the left-hand side. That 11 would be considered an outlier. And you can't really just look at it. Like eyeballing it, we probably could have thought, okay, well, 11's pretty far away. But what if it had been 13? 13 would have looked far away too, but it wouldn't have been an outlier. So you have to use the formulas down here to figure out the outliers. All right, let's try this problem. So we have a bunch of data here, and we want to go ahead and find the quartiles. So what we're going to do is click this box to go into StatCrunch. We're going to go to Stat, Summary Stats, and then Column. That's going to give me this screen. So we're going to click on var1 because that's where my data is going to come in. Remember, by clicking on this box here next to the data, all the data will be typed in for you, so you don't have to type it in. Okay, so we click the column. I always forget to click that column, and then it yells at me when I try to compute because it says, where's the data? So click on that column. Then we're going to come down to this box and grab what we need. So we are going to grab Q1. Remember, to get more than one item, you have to hold the control key down. So hold that control key down. Q2 is actually the median. So StatCrunch doesn't list it as Q2. It only lists at the median, excuse me. So you have Q1, the median, Q3, and IQR. It goes ahead and does the IQR for you. So that's kind of nice. Then you hit compute, and you have all of your data right here. Okay, so Q1 is 35. Q2 is 39.5. Q3 is 46. And then my interquartile range, we could have figured it out, right? Because it's Q3 minus Q1, but let's StatCrunch do it. And so that would be 11. Okay, so that's nice. StatCrunch did all the work for us, except we need to look at the outliers. Okay, so let's come over here and use our formulas to find the outliers. So the first one is Q1 minus 1.5 IQR. So that's going to be 35 minus 1.5 times 11. And that's going to give me a second, 35. That gives me 18.5. And then let's do the other end. So that's the left side of the number line. Then we're going to look at Q3 plus 1.5 IQR. That would be 46 plus 1.5 times 11 equals 62.5. Okay, so now what we have to look at is on the, so we've got our number line here, right? On the left-hand side, if we are less than 18.5, that's going to be an outlier. On this side, if we're greater than 62.5, that's going to be an outlier. Okay, those are the two ends that we're looking for. And if any of the numbers are outside of those ranges, then we have a problem. So let's look at the 18.5. So less than 18.5, let's look at our data. Looks like 15, right? 15 is less than 18.5. I don't see anything else. So 15 is an outlier. So now let's look at the other end. The other end is greater than 62.5. I see a 56. Nope. It looks like we're okay on that end. We don't have any numbers greater than 62.5. So the only outlier is that 15 way on the left-hand side. Now at this point, they may ask you to pick a box and plot, but you know how to do that. You have your minimum point, which is 15. You have your largest point, it's 56. And then you have your Q1, Q2, and Q3. So you're going to easily be able to tell on those graphs which one would be the right box and whisker plot for this data. All right, we do have other ways that we break up the data. In this class, we're going to use the quartiles, which is breaking it up into 4 equal parts, and then we're going to use the percentiles, where we break it up into 100 equal parts. But there's lots of different ways that we can do this. Deciles would break it up into 10 parts, but we'll leave it at those two. So let's head to part 2.